I'm hugely satisfied with this first ever WWR science conference. Because athletes and the active community were the main target group, and that's what is for me the highlight of the whole conference, because each presentation was linked with guidelines, advices, which I'm very thankful for, and I hope that the other listeners appreciate it, and that we can spread this information somehow in our athlete welfare section, or somehow to get this information to the people who couldn't attend so far. And I think we should continue doing that in either way. And yeah,
and also maybe, because I can also imagine that some people could not attend time-wise, so they can just watch the recording. I also think that there's also a lot of in-depth information that may be a little bit much for people to understand. So I think there's also a need for making this information simple, so people can apply it in their everyday training sessions and in their games, but make it simple so people don't have to watch a conference of 4 hours or even more to get their knowledge. So there's also, I think, quite a challenge to get the right information to the right people.
But what I realized was the difference between the two sessions. That the first session was very, very, how to say, handy. And the second session was very scientific. I got some messages where he said, "Whoa, that's really, really good to know, but I cannot digest this information so fast," which is on one way very good to have, and on the other way, we, as you said, we have to figure out how to bring this on point to the people, that it's usable for their daily.
Because I know that at the Loughborough University we had some discussions about making infographics. So like small pieces of information with some drawings to it, so it's easy for people to digest and just have the facts on it, but not how we came to these facts, because not everyone is interested in how we make science. They only are interested in the outcomes of science.
And for me, that was the most impressive thing to listen today, about the pure amount of scientists researching in our sport, and the findings they presented today. For example, this practical use of knowing about your opponent's sport class, about arm trunk function, how to deal with this on court, or also the field testings for coaches, the usability of respiratory cooling methods, and even how they got to these results, because from a scientific point of view, that's also very interesting for me. But that was very impressive, and
you are a scientist.
And the globe comes together here. It's really, really cool to see.
Yeah. Vicky, will you just tell us when we're on?
You're on, Viola. You can start a bit with the panel discussion.
I certainly thought you'd started, because obviously it's really nice to get the feedback, and obviously that's what I want to try and to get as well. So yes, feel free to sort of introduce it more formally, so that the audience know what we're doing for the next 20 minutes or so, and then obviously myself and Ken then can wrap up the whole day, and Richard can chip in as well, you know, in this session, as well as the wrap up at the end. So over to you, Viola.
Okay, so I'm on. Okay, I hope everyone is ready to get started again for the final session of today. First of all, I think I'm very proud that this conference finally happened, because I remember that I've talked to Justin Frischberg, an athlete from GP, in 2006, who had the first idea of having a scientific conference on all the science in wheelchair rugby. And it lasted for 15 years before we really had it. I think we were all very busy with the questions: where should we do it? How do we get people there? What are the costs? Will it be accessible for everyone? And I think a little bit thanks to Corona, because we can do it online, we just decided to do it, and it will be accessible for everyone, I think, even though the time frames may not have been very suitable for everyone, but they can watch the recordings. And I'm very proud, within a few months after launching the idea of doing it online, we have made it. Then for a wrap up of the whole conference, I think I was very impressed this afternoon. There's a wealth of knowledge, and for me personally, it still needs to sink in. So I can only give you some general impressions. I think there were many studies in athletes with spinal cord injury, and there were fewer studies that also involved athletes without spinal cord injuries. And I think we need to be aware of that we include many athletes with other health conditions and impairment types in wheelchair rugby that I think are behind in the science. So athletes with cerebral palsy, amputations, and neuromuscular conditions. I think we know a lot, and we do not optimally use it to optimize sport performance for all athletes. So there's still a lot of work to do. When I think about the thermoregulation information, the cardiorespiratory function, training, equipment, I think there's still lots of work to be done to get this implemented in training sessions, in competition, and apply it in everyday life. There are many things we do know, but the impact on sport performance is not always known, and specifically not always in wheelchair rugby. So we know a lot about aerobic performance, but many of the activities in wheelchair rugby are anaerobic or interval, and we don't know if the impact is similar or totally different. We do not know the impact of better health or fewer complications of spinal cord injury on performance. When I think about weight, nutrition, pressure sores, respiratory infections. And we do not really know the impact of cardiovascular changes. We do know a bit about spinal cord injury, but if I refer to other health conditions like neuromuscular disease, there's also an impact on cardiorespiratory function. And we do not know if that impact is similar. The other thing I got from this conference is that measurement of impairments is quite difficult. So there are no general predictions, for example, of autonomic function. There's no good measurement of core temperature with wearable devices. And there are some wearable devices for speed in wheelchair rugby that we can use. There are large differences in aerobic capacity between athletes, so we still will have to measure that. And I think as a general thing that I take from this conference is that we always need to think about which impairments are primary, so which comes from the spinal cord injury, the neuromuscular condition, the cerebral palsy, and which ones are secondary and can maybe be changed back or be reversible by training, and in whom can this be trained, and what are the long-term effects of this training. For example, if you talk about training of cardiorespiratory function and fatigue, what is the long-term effect of this training, and what is the long-term effect of this fatigue? Then the other thing is, can impairments or effects of health conditions be compensated by equipment? And does this change it back to normal, or are there any side effects like using a belly binder? Is this recruiting the large blood pool? And is this improving trunk control? Or are there also side effects that do not change it back into normal? And which equipments can we use as part of the competition rules, and which ones are permitted and which ones are not? And then coming back to classification, which is my favorite topic, I think stable and unchangeable impairments that you cannot change by training, which should be considered for classification. And I think cardiovascular function might be one of those. One of the prerequisites is that it should be measurable, that it should be reliable, that we should have the right equipment to measure it. and that we should know about the impact on sport-specific performance. So as always, with science, we get a lot of answers. We also get a lot of questions, and I'm quite happy to discuss where we should go for future directions for science, because I think the science should serve the sport, and we're happy to serve you as a wheelchair rugby community with the science, but you need to give us directions where you want it to go and where your needs are.
To hop in here, Viola,
Yep.
what I take from this conference is one question I have, and one finding which was a little bit shocking in the end, but shocking in a good way, that this asymmetrical distance traveled by my arms pushing a chair during wheelchair propulsion, it was quite shocking to me. That even on a full court sprint, my non-dominant arm can left behind up to 6 meters even, which was quite interesting. But my question for the future of this conference would be, in terms of being an athlete, and to gather how we want to set up this conference. Because as you said, thanks to Corona, we were actually be able to doing it. But in the terms of recruiting as many athletes as possible into this conversation, how we want to put the format to the future. And I think one thing we can do is doing a SurveyMonkey questionnaire about the future format of this conference, and asking also this type of questions to realize where the future direction should look like.
Yeah, I think we should ask athletes and everyone who is involved in wheelchair rugby, also coaches, officials, and maybe also even the spectators, how we can get the knowledge that is out there to them and which knowledge they need. And also what future research they want, what questions they have that we can answer with research, and how we can bring that information to them. And I think this conference is one important step. I think there can also be other ways of getting the knowledge to the athletes and to the wheelchair rugby community. And I'm very curious about this online conference because it was easy accessible for everyone, a little bit aside from the time frame that might not be very convenient for everyone, but people can watch the recordings. So that's one option we can do. And then also, do we need to do it annually or biannually, or I have no idea. And if people are willing to come to a conference or rather have it online as we did it now. So I think we should, it would be nice to have some feedback of everyone who was present in this regard. I don't know if there's anyone in the audience at this moment who's still listening who wants to give us some feedback on that.
And if not, the president can shape the future.
Yeah,
how it can look like.
I'm still here.
Deborah, please.
Oh, hello. I missed a chunk in the afternoon. I'll have to go back to it. But it's been fabulous. But I just wonder, you're talking about the accessibility and it being understandable. I sort of wonder whether we should, not to be sort of suggesting it's dumbing it down and smarting it up, but have like chunks that are specifically for athletes and chunks that are specifically for classifiers or scientists. Not that people can't listen to them all, but then I think that if you know that you're listening to something that is specifically for athletes, you might be less intimidated about actually asking questions. I always find if you're listening to a scientist, you feel a little bit, like you're too dumb to ask.
I hope not many people felt that way, but
no, it was very accessible. But I just think from an athlete's perspective, they might feel more comfortable if they knew it was, if there were sessions that were particularly directed at their own learning. I don't know.
Are there any athletes who are still attending and who want to comment on this?
It's tea time.
Okay, let's do it.
Yes.
Here and speak in Switzerland. I just can follow Jens because I felt it's a really good thing, and I really joined. I was staying the whole part of it, and as Jens said, there was some informations which are quite easy, everybody understood, and then it was like more into the science stuff, but even then it was interesting to hear, and I really hope that you continue with these, sharing all these know-how with us as athletes, with us as coaches. Now it was really, really nice, and I want to thank everybody for their work. It was pretty cool. Thanks, Viola.
Thank you very much.
Adrian, I have a question. Would you like to see some kind of format like this conference being in person on the side of a tournament, like after Europeans or after World Championships? Would you feel that is something that is convenient for athletes, or is it too much overloading then?
I would say yes, but in that online stuff, I think it's much easier because you can record it, and then everyone who wasn't at that tournament or was in another time zone or in another conference can just watch the live stream or watch the replay. So I think it's better to record it and put it on the website, for example. But we can do it in real. It's good too.
Yeah, I also think that at times of a tournament, athletes, coaches, and everyone who is involved is very much focused on that specific competition. And it's not necessarily the best time to also have science brought to you. So I think it's easier for people to have that apart. On the other hand, sometimes it's nice to be together for a lively discussion. But usually I experience that there's lots of focus on the tournament and people don't want to focus on other things at the same time because it's just too much.
What I believe is it's the same like Adrian and you mentioned, Viola. What I'm concerned of is having a single conference event where people who can afford to go be able to go, and we leave people on the path or people behind who are not wealthy enough to go there. And I'm thinking about also maybe a dual format, let's say an in-person conference with a digital format simultaneously. It's something what I have in mind so far.
Yeah, that would be a nice option to have some there in person.
And just butting in there, those conversations have taken place between myself and Ken. Obviously, we can bring it to the table anyway, but with COVID, it certainly has helped. We're at an academic institution, and we can offer dual learning to our students. And so my proposal actually was that potentially in a year's time, we could run something that's similar, that might be after maybe a classification training event or something like that. And we can then have a day, 2 days, 2 afternoons of online plus delivery where people can be back in their own countries, but also build in a piece around some practical, and that might entice a few people to come, whether it be some laboratory testing or field-based testing or classification training. Like I think Yen, I can't pronounce your first name.
Let's say Jeans with how every British American call me.
And Adrian in the Swiss country. We can tailor educational events to fit the right audience. There is a purpose, around the fact that we want to deliver good quality sports science. We didn't brief the speakers today, mainly because we wanted not to overload the speakers with having to do something too scripted, i.e. what's the practical application, what's this, but I feel that there was a nice breadth and depth, like you've alluded to, from some great speakers today, where there are research papers and these are some practical applications. But like you say, we can meet, and Cameron, we perhaps didn't give Cameron good enough chance at the microphone to talk about a whole area where there's some really great work that himself and Chris West and others in Canada are doing around athlete welfare and autonomic dysreflexia and aspects around that. And that's essential learning for people new into wheelchair rugby and different sports. But we also need to appreciate, with some of the work from Katie, just as examples, that it's not all about people with a spinal cord injury, and there's obviously other health conditions and impairments as well. So we've just given you a snapshot today, and it's great to hear the wonderful feedback that some people are doing, and they've done it in the chat box today. But maybe Richard can also comment, because obviously we pulled this together relatively quickly. COVID does help for these things, but I do appreciate from Viola's comments that sometimes in-person things are great because you just get that extra bit of conversation and something going to get a coffee, something going to get a beer, depending on your preferences of what you want to do in the evening. And it's getting that fine balance, because we can't. Today, I think at maximum, we had 109 people online at any one time, which was great. I think Sven said to me that we've got 240 people that registered. And so some people have been popping in and popping out. But at the same time, we've had 240 people that have expressed an interest in this event, and they then will be getting the video link to watch. And if we set some things up right, I think I've read something from Anne coming in the chat, that if we had a health and wellbeing session that was reduced and just had content from 2 speakers, we can go in with more depth. We can actually send some preparationary material. And then with Viola and others, we can have an infographic that's co-produced by the athletes, the healthcare team, the coaches, of what it looks like as well.
Yeah.
Vicky, thank you. I'll just sort of comment quickly, which is say we really wanted to get this conference going, and we weren't sure what the audience was going to be, what the presenters could be. And I think it's we've all seen from the feedback that it's been really successful. I can tell you that we absolutely want to do it again. We want to try and make it a yearly thing, because we think that keeps the momentum going. And again, listening to the various comments, clearly, if we get the right people together, we can start to tailor what that conference can actually be on a yearly basis and really sort of work towards it. And then the other bit that sprung out for me is how we use this research to, I guess, ultimately change things in the sport, whether that's the rules, our processes, or whether it's just educational resources that we can provide out to member nations and various other partners. But I think the key thing is to get the right people together, come up with the ideas about how we can do this next year, either the same or a hybrid element where we've got people meeting in person, perhaps doing table discussions, but then inviting an audience in to observe and listen. I think there could be so many good ideas that we could do something really quite successful. So I will certainly be taking away and looking at how we do that next year. And that's the main thing for me. I think it's been absolutely fantastic. So my thank you to everyone who's been involved, including everyone who's been listening in. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think one last thing I really want to say, because this conference would have not been possible without the input of everyone involved, but also not with all the people who attended. So we really need your input on how you want this conference to continue in the future. And the other thing is, I think we were relatively clear about having these kinds of conferences where you can really focus on it, so outside competitions. On the other hand, we cannot have research without your participation, because you are the subjects of research, and we try to accommodate as much as possible to your needs and to your needs at the competition, but also your needs for not doing unnecessary traveling. So we try to make it as convenient as possible for you to participate in research, but we really do need your help. There will be no research without your help. So please, if we invite you to participate in research, take that into consideration and help us doing the research to improve your sport.
Made to round it up and add to Richard's how to utilize science here. So I think on all topics the speakers referred to classification, and the WWR as an athlete-centered organization reacted also in this field to establish the technical classifier, who is an ex-athlete who is able to become actually a classifier. And I think that shows within the new classification rules that the WWR is also willing to utilize science and to act as an athlete-centered organization for those who love to stay involved in the sport they love, and it's a beneficial for both sides, or benefit for both sides to keeping the expertise in the sport, building trust into the system. As Viola mentioned, science is nothing without participation, and athletes cannot gain performance without science. And last but not least is that this system provides a mental well-being for athletes, which is also very, very important for people who step down from the active career. And I think that's often past the line that what they think about. And I think that's also very important to know that the organization wants to keep you involved and do your thing as much as possible.
Okay, I think it's almost 7:15 for me at the continental time, 6:15 for British time, and many other times for all the other attendees. I think it's good to round up and to say goodbye to everyone. Is there anything we haven't talked about that still needs to be mentioned here?
No, I think that's a great job, Viola. Some good points for Richard to take back to Steve, who unfortunately couldn't join us today, but myself and Sven will be working on this video, check that it downloads and records, and possibly break it up to a couple of small segments. So behind the scenes, but Sven did obviously do a stint of chairpersoning, and I'd like to thank Sven from behind the scenes, because he's been working very much around the administration side of things of today's event, with setting up the Zoom call and keeping us all in the nice flow that it's actually sort of ran as well. So thanks very much, Sven, for doing that. Ken, I'm not sure if we did mention anything in the end about the certification for attending today. Would you like to just make a quick comment about that and then just wrap up from your perspective?
Sure. For the audience that are still here, we do want to give you credit for participating. So what we can at this point, we're going to provide a certificate of attendance for those who request it. If you can email Vicky, we'll put that together and send it to you. However, you can use that to your governing body. That will be up to you. Starting in the future, we want to look at and how to make this more formal. Usually then it's tied to a university that will be providing the education credit, but that may not apply to all the countries as well. So, but we will do, we'll research that out, and for the next year, they will make it more formal for all of you. Thank you again, everyone, for participating. This has been amazing from my personal standpoint as well.
Thanks very much, Ken. And Richard, would you like to have the last word?
I'm not sure I need to. I think I'm going to leave that with Ken, absolutely. So Ken, thank you, and Vicky, Viola, and as always, when you start to name names, you know you'll always miss someone. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks. On that note, we can press the leave button and enjoy the rest of your evening, or indeed enjoy the rest of your day if you have woken up and got a day ahead of you. Thanks, everyone.
Take
care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.